does it mean to remember? I'm walking through one of the most solemn places in America, Pearl Harbor. But it's more than just memorials and battleships. It's about the stories that echo across the Pacific.
Please hold off on taking any photos until you are physically inside the memorial.
The memorial sits on the exact spot where the battleship Arizona was sunk, and with it, more than 1,100 are here in this watery grave. Almost half of all the people who lost their lives on that December day in 1941. The design of the memorial is as meaningful as the site itself. It's sagging in the center and taller at the edges. This mirrors the trajectory of World War II. Initial defeat, but strong at the ends. Make sure you go to the shrine room. These are the names of 1,177 members of military who lost their lives here on the USS Arizona. These are not just names, these are people, husbands, brothers, friends, everyday people just like us. The 7 windows represent the date of the attack, December 7. Because of the large numbers of visitors to the memorial, we can only stay 45 minutes. We stay long enough for a docent to tell us how 45 sailors who survived that fateful day decided to have burials at sea after the war, so they could join their fellow sailors who died during the December 7th attack. Kind of eerily, this does feel like a living museum, as we can still see an oil slick on the water's surface from the sunken ship after all these decades. Look out, and it's not hard to picture what it was like being on Battleship Row during the surprise attack. We're reminded this isn't a tourist attraction, this is a war grave to respect those who lost their lives here. Almost forgotten is this battleship. It wasn't technically on Battleship Row, it's on the other side of Fort Island, but it too suffered immeasurable damage on December 7th, 1941. The USS Utah lost 58 men. All 58 are still entombed in their watery graves. It's the last of its kind, commissioned by the U.S. Navy in 1944. The USS Missouri is remembered for more than being the largest and last battleship built by the United States.
Missouri was not here on December 7th, 1941. She was still in New York under construction. And that lasted just over 3 years. On January 29th, 1944, she was christened and launched by Mary Margaret Truman, the daughter of Harry Truman, the senator from the state of Missouri.
The USS Missouri never fired at another naval vessel during World War II. It provided gunfire support and softened beachheads for shore invasions in Okinawa and Iwo Jima.
From bottom of the keel, top of the mast, she's 216 feet. That's very nearly a 22-story building.
Wow.
At her beam at the widest point, she's 108 feet 2 inches. And that's a very specific number because the locks in the Panama Canal were and still are only 110 feet wide. So whenever Missouri had to transit the canal, there was exactly 11 inches of space between the side of the ship and the side of the canal. Yeah, we had to repaint her a few times.
Earlier, we saw where World War II began for America, but now we're where it ended. We are standing by the spot where the Allies and the Japanese signed the surrender papers that ended World War II.
On August 15, 1945, the Japanese notified the Allies they had accepted the terms of surrender. Missouri was designated as a site to receive that surrender while the ship lay at anchor in Tokyo Bay, Japan. That designation made by then President Harry Truman. USS Lansdowne brought the Japanese delegation alongside just before 9 a.m. I want you just for a moment to put yourselves in the minds of the Japanese delegation. Understand that in 5,000 years, Japan's history, she had never been conquered, never been defeated, never been occupied, never had surrendered to anybody. So this act of coming here that day, having to submit both surrender and occupation, was not only unique to their experiences, it was also a profound shock to their entire country. But when General MacArthur began speaking, he didn't talk about revenge, retaliation, recrimination. Instead, he talked about justice, tolerance, peace, and reconciliation. This took the Japanese completely by surprise. The day they had come here to surrender to their bitterest enemy, the last thing they expected was to be treated with this level of dignity and respect. So when General MacArthur completed his opening remarks, he invited, not ordered, invited the Japanese to come forward and sign the documents, which they did. Before he sat down, though, he motioned forward these two gaunt, emaciated gentlemen standing behind him. One closest to you was General Jonathan Wainwright. He was commander of U.S. forces in the Philippines when they had surrendered Corregidor in 1942. Beside him is General Arthur Percival, who commanded British forces in Singapore when they had to surrender in 1942. Both men were taken captive and were placed in prison camps, kept there for the entire length of the war. The average life expectancy for anybody in Japanese custody during the war was about 6 months. These gentlemen survived for 3.5 years. Neither man weighed more than 95 pounds when this picture was taken. When the last signatures are fixed, the documents are complete, war is over. So General MacArthur goes to the microphone. The general says these words: "Today the guns are silent. A great tragedy has ended. A great victory has been won. Death no longer reigns from the skies. The seas bear only commerce. Men everywhere walk upright in the sunlight, and the entire world lies quietly at peace." Mr. Kaze would later record in his diary that the general's words turned the deck of this warship into an altar for peace. With that ceremony concluded, it took only 23 minutes to end mankind's costliest and bloodiest war. Throughout the world, some 69 million people perished in that war. 50 million of those were civilians. A signal was given. The site there in Tokyo Bay, Japan, was overflown by over 1,500 Allied aircraft. Just as they did so, the sun finally broke through the clouds, a ray of hope shining forward into humanity's future.
One poignant but lesser-known event happened during the Battle of Okinawa. A Japanese kamikaze plane hit the USS Missouri. The battleship was left relatively unscathed, but the pilot died. The crew gave this enemy combatant a military burial at sea.
And to do this in the middle of war was really unusual. Probably gotten a lot more attention than it did if something else hadn't happened on April 12, 1945. In Warren Springs, Georgia, President Franklin Roosevelt suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and breathed his last. Harry Truman, who was vice president, became president, pretty much ate up the news cycle for the next several weeks. So while this incident was never classified, it never really got the attention that it truly deserved. But I want you just for a moment to think about a nation in the middle of a war, particularly when it's brutal, protracted as World War II was, that takes the time, makes the effort to honor the dead of its enemy. That says something about it, something that we really need to remember and hold close, that even in our darkest, most terrible moments, we are not going to let go of our humanity. But we have a mission. That mission is to not only remember those who served, but especially to remember and honor those who will never be coming.
This is the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, also known as the Punchbowl Cemetery. It's the final resting place for more than 53,000 veterans, with more than 13,000 of them from World War II's Pacific Theater. Being here is a stark reminder of the lasting human cost of the war. It probably is no surprise that some big names are buried here. Renowned World War II correspondent Ernie Pyle, longtime Senator Army Captain Daniel Inouye, and shuttle astronaut Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Ellison Onizuka. From the Arizona Memorial to the quiet corners of the Punchbowl Cemetery, Hawaii's island of Oahu has a World War II history that's both painful and powerful. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Mary Goes Round the World. As far as tips of the week for you, here's a couple. First, book a reservation. It costs $1. A couple of weeks out usually is enough just to hold your place. And what can't you bring? Typical stuff, but you can't bring like an empty bag that's not clear. You can bring a selfie stick. How about that? What can you bring in? Bring a clear bag like you would bring at a sporting event. That way you can bring more stuff. Otherwise, you can bring basically like the size of a wallet. And if you forget to do that, you're going to have to go to the baggage storage facility to drop off your bag. Those are my tips of the week for you.